Thank you so much, everybody. First of all, it has been a great event. I appreciate all the activities and the food. The food, especially yesterday, was amazing. So thank you so much. And reflecting on what you were saying, Doug, right now, I really like the insights from yesterday, the panels, the content. It was very rich. It was very useful. And there are two insights that I want to use to start the conversation today, if everybody agrees. And these are from Keith, right? The first one is that he told us the importance of the experience, how the experience can make or break the success of something. And the second one is that every time that somebody says AI, we have to have a shot. So if at the end of this session I'm totally drunk, it's thanks to Keith. Thank you so much for that. So no, with all seriousness, I'm gonna be talking about adoption, but adoption is always linked to an experience. And I think that's something that we all can agree is that an experience is everything. Just thinking on commercial, just reviewing the journey of a patient or a physician, there's an awareness experience, there's an access experience. We talk a lot about channels, the direct-to-consumer channel that now is growing so fast in the pharmaceutical industry. It's an experience for patients. And even each tactic, each campaign, it's an experience of itself, correct? And something that we know is that many of these experiences could be amazing. We could have great customer satisfaction scores. If you are measuring NPS, you would see that people would be recommending these experiences or they are willing to recommend it. But many times these experiences are not hitting the mark. They are not hitting the specific return that they were designed to give us, right? And think about it. It could be a great channel that everybody loves, but it's not giving you the scale of engagement that you were expecting. Or is this amazing platform that everybody's using, but nobody's converting to the behavior that it was planned to convert, right? So that's why my team and I, that's in where we come in Pfizer, because our job precisely is to work across the whole organization, all brands, all therapeutic areas, all functions, including HR, and we help them to precisely understand where the experience is broken. And not broken because we see only lack of satisfaction, but that we see that they are not achieving that scale of this conversion that they were looking for. So it was because the nature of my team that now that the company is embracing on AI, we were asked to be part of the core teams that are putting together the agents that were prioritizing the organization. And our goal is to understand in advance before launching anything and during launching that we get the levels of adoption that will give us the specific outcomes that the company is expecting. And that's what I'm gonna be sharing today. I'm gonna be telling you about what we do it, how are we doing it, and I'm not assuming that I'm right. So I hope that maybe you won't have questions, you will have opinions, and I'm here to learn as much as I'm learning from yesterday from you, from all the presenters, and all the questions. Good? So before I get into the details, and I tell you how we're doing things, my first question was, do we have an adoption problem with AI? Because it's not only that I'm using it every day. Every time that I'm talking to somebody, everybody's using it every day. And when you see statistics, because we love statistics, we see things like this one, right? 800 million weekly users, and maybe this was from last month. Right now, maybe it might be a little bit more. But 10 million or 10 plus million daily conversations on AI. Is that an adoption problem? So maybe it's at the enterprise level, right? When we switch to the enterprise level, 100% of the Fortune 500 companies said already that they are using AI. That didn't happen with social, not even with e-commerce. 2 years after e-commerce came out, nobody was using it. Nobody from the Fortune 500 companies was saying, oh yeah, we're using it. Now, 2 years after ChatGPT became so popular, 100% of them are saying, we are using it. Does that sound like an adoption problem? No, right? It doesn't sound like an adoption problem. The issue starts coming when, now this is statistics from McKinsey, that I'm sure that everybody loves McKinsey, just like we do. So, it's interesting, right? Here's in where the thing starts clarifying the reason why adoption is so important. 74% of companies struggle to achieve and scale value from AI. So yes, we are using AI, but is it giving us, or is it giving to the companies, or is it giving to the teams what they were looking for? I'm sure that we are getting there, but at the scale, it doesn't feel like it's happening, right? And I'm not talking only about the company that I work for, I'm talking about what's happening in the world. And then when you see at the user level, it's even more interesting, because while many of us are using it for our everyday, at work, statistics like these are really interesting to see, right? Which is only 10% of US employees claim that they are using AI at least once a week for work purposes. I'm sure that that number doesn't represent this team. I'm sure that maybe here 100% of us, we are using it for work. But when we think on our company, when you think in every single role, when you think on every single level of the company, that's in where, yeah, it's that 10%. We are that 10% of the company using it. The other 90 might not be using it for multiple reasons, maybe not because they don't want to, right? But even more interesting is the last part. Only 0.5% of that 10% are using it for augmentation or for automation. Yes, we are using it to ask cool questions, to come up with jokes, to write songs, to make funny videos. We're using it for that. But how many is using it for real augmentation? Yesterday we were hearing amazing cases about augmentation in our table, and I love it because that's where we want to be, in where we really can do something that usually took us 3 months and we can do it in 3 hours. Or when we can do something that they usually require a team of 20 people and it can be done just with one. And I'm not talking about the usual concept of, oh, let's talk about layoffs and how AI is going to replace humans. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about using a tool at its max. And that is not happening, correct? Just think on the cases that you are experiencing or using. Right now, we get surprised when we are doing something that really is moving the needle of our everyday, right? It's getting there, but there are many elements that are stopping us. It's not only the willingness to use it or not, right? So anyway, that's the reason why we were asked to be part of the core team. And I appreciated, Keith, when you were presenting yesterday the core team of your program in where CX was on the table. I'm very excited to start seeing that across the whole industry, at least in the person where we are on the table precisely providing this level of insights, and I really like it. So at Pfizer, we were asked to be part of the table to focus on adoption. That's our main goal. Now, before jumping into, let's do surveys for everybody, let's understand what they're lacking and what they're not lacking, something that we did, and this was a couple of years ago, was to develop a method that we call the experience effectiveness method, which I'm going to describe to you right now, right? So if we can dim the light a little bit, because as you can see, I was not very conscious about the white font on top of the green color. So remember that, forget that I work on CX, think that I'm coming from finance, right? And that was very efficient. So if we can dim a little bit the light. So this is 6 steps that if I tell you one by one, you're going to tell me like, yeah, I know that. It's obvious. And we did that, right? So the only thing is that when you put them all together, it started to give us the information or the insight that we were really looking for. So if you agree, I'm going to walk you through these 6 steps, and we can comment a little bit one by one. The first one, and Miles, you mentioned this yesterday a couple of times, and I totally agree with it, it's understanding the problem. What are we solving for? What is the issue that we are trying to fix? So when we're talking about adoption, we don't talk about, okay, what are the problems with adoption? No. What level of adoption is the one that we need to achieve the outcomes that we're expecting? 40% of adoption, 60% of adoption? And do we need adoption every day, every week? From the core users, the top users, the whole company, for a specific persona? And do we need it within a specific function, for a specific workflow, for a specific process? So understanding the problem is not the high level, like, yeah, let's fix adoption. The first thing that we do is to frame and to understand totally the adoption from all the angles that can help us to quantify it. That's step number 1. I'm sure that that's very common across all the companies, but we really find that that step is the real foundation of whatever we're going to do. Good? The second one is that we start understanding what are the drivers of effectiveness. Good? So what I was telling you, okay, if adoption will be that 60% of a specific cohort is using it every week, what are going to be the drivers that will make them feel that this is effective, right? So what is the context? Where are they going to be having this experience? In what situation? So here's where we started doing the very obvious journeys. We start understanding, as I was saying, context. I had the chance to talk to a couple of companies, digital companies and media companies this morning, and I'm pretty amazed on all the information that they have a context. Context is so important. Here we need to understand context to really understand not only the perspective of the need of the business, which is the problem, but to understand the perspective of the user. That's pretty obvious. We talk about journeys since many years ago. I didn't put a label there because think on the various basic and standard way of doing things. Step number 3 is when we were defining the problem, helps us to understand very, very, very well what is going to help us to make or break an experience, which is understand the CPIs. All we are used to talk about KPIs. I'm sure that we can make a list of 1,000 KPIs that we all love, I'm pretty sure. But when we switch to customer performance indicators, this is when it starts getting very interesting. Let me give you a customer performance indicator that is very simple. Perception of efficiency, right? So we don't measure satisfaction only. We, for example, in this case, we measure in some of the programs perception of efficiency. I mean, it's not only about measuring like, oh, that's good or that's wrong. No, we have a target. We start with a baseline. First of all, we understand if that's gonna be the KPI that will help us to get the insights to optimize the platform to get adoption. Thanks to the drivers. But once we define it, we start saying, okay, what's gonna be the target? What has to be the perception of efficiency and from what cohort? And please don't think that we're over-engineering this. We come with 3 or 4 customer performance indicators. But these are the ones that really start helping us to see on a dashboard if we are going in the direction that we want. And when I'm talking about benchmarks, really something that we enjoy a lot is that we don't only need to have a baseline, we need to have a target. Usually with customer satisfaction or with NPS, we always go with above 50 is great, close to 80 is amazing, 90 is awesome. Well, here we need to understand what percentage is the one that we have seen that other platforms that are getting the volume of adoption that we want, how much do they have of perception of efficiency? So then we don't only have a baseline, we have a North Star. So now we have a KPI that is telling us what the customer is thinking or feeling. We have a baseline on how are they feeling right now, and we have a North Star of where we want to make them feel. That's why I put a bulb there. At least when we started to use this methodology 2 years ago, we were very focused on KPIs and the standard customer experience metrics, satisfaction, NPS, effort, and those are very good. But those are very high level when you really want to go to the detail to fix something. So anyway, that's step number 3, and as you can see, that's what we call defining the problem. All of that, it's a lot of listening and understanding and really agreeing with whomever is the business owner on these are the metrics that we are going to improve. That makes total difference, right? So anyway, once we do that, we do the standard feedback collection, voice of customer, voice of user, market research, all of those things are the ones that we do. But we do it in a cycle and in a channel that will give us the volume of feedback that we need to precisely understand the customer performance indicators. With AI, something that we are finding that is incredibly useful is that we are not only doing surveys and interviews and ongoing conversations through chat, we are also having now the opportunity to double-click into the conversation so we can see the whole interaction between AI and a user. So it's not only about somebody telling us, yes, I like it on a survey, or coming into a meeting to tell us, no, I didn't like that part, I do like this part. We have the conversations and we can feel the frustration. So we use the same AI to understand sentiment, to understand when somebody was getting frustrated with AI, and understand what they were asking, what was the return that they were getting, what was the implications for this on adoption. They left after that feeling, or they stood? And if they stood, did they stay longer than other ones that were having the similar feeling? So that is something that a couple of years ago we didn't have access to, and now we can have access to. Here I'm gonna make a caveat that privacy has been a very good friend of us to do that. So you can imagine we went through 50 meetings to be approved to do this, and, but it worth it. Of course, there's a lot of a partnership with whomever is the user, and they know that we are doing this, and we do it in a way in where the data is de-identified to be sure that there are no privacy implications. But once you know how to have access to it, it's really one of the best tools that we are getting to it. Good? So the second thing that I can tell you that we do for decoding the solution is the data analytics. I love the presentation this morning of the dashboard. Lauren, it was amazing what you were showing. We enjoy all of those type of things because here's in where we connect, okay, this is all the feedback, these are the CPIs, these are the KPIs. Now let's get into action. Let's fold our sleeves and let's understand really all our hypotheses of perception of efficiency, of perception of value are getting translated into the adoption that we want. And no, it doesn't. So why? And then what are the implications into the specific platform? And here's in where when we start getting into an insight, we don't go to the level of insight like, oh, we discovered that they love a bigger size of font. No, it's like, tell me exactly, because the development team is expecting that we're gonna give them the information that they're gonna put on the backlog. So it's exactly what we are looking for. The business is telling us for prioritization, what are gonna be the implications of that change, not only on the development time, but also on the cost of development and on the time to get to the solution. So here's where I'm enjoying a lot to be part of CX right now because we are having a different conversation than the one that we used to have in the market research era. Now we are required to provide this level of detail. And I'm telling you that I'm enjoying it, but really it's very difficult to do. Right? It's like, I'm gonna tell you about the cycles of the feedback that we do. And it's a little bit of a stressful because we're trying to do something that there was no playbook. We work with a lot of partners, and we were telling them, oh, we want to do this and that, and they were like, oh, CX doesn't do that. You have to ask somebody else. It's like, well, isn't then what we do? So anyway, the last step that we do after really having all the detail between the CPIs, the KPIs, and all numbers is to deliver the insights to action. If you ask me, that's the critical part. Understanding the problem is the foundation. What is in the middle is the way to get to a solution. But if you don't have a clear path to take those insights into action, it's just another beautiful PowerPoint deck, and nothing moves the needle, right? So here, what we do is not only to bring our insights, we engineer the insights to action process. Who are the ones that are accountable of optimizing whatever is the platform that we're fixing? What is the role, and what are their methods, what are their cycles of optimization? And how do they execute? For example, with the development team, is how do they organize their backlog? How often do they have a backlog review? Is at the beginning of each sprint? Are they taking 2 weeks sprints, 4 weeks sprints, whatever is the format they're using? We have to understand that, because then we need to introduce our insights into their own processes, so then we can have a full cycle. So that's one of the parts that I like the most, and I want to share with you, for example, in terms of AI, how we set up, how we put that into action, correct? Which is this is the feedback loop of our methodology. So we start understanding the experience, right? So track what they do. As I was telling you, we track not only the outputs that we call the insight that they are getting, we also track the interaction, the conversations, and we track the touch point and the context. So that's something, when I'm telling you that we track, that's something that we either gather data from a system, or it's part of a live session, or it's an interview by phone, or it's an email with a survey. Specifically for the AI projects, we are using 4 channels to gather feedback. We have live sessions with the users every week. Once a week, we have live sessions with the users, not with the owners of the platform, with real users. We have an ongoing chat conversation through Teams with them, so in where we can follow up on the issues that they were communicating in the live sessions. Number 3 is that I told you that we also are tracking all the conversations and understanding what is the conversation that they're having with AI. And finally, we also use surveys to understand at high level what is the overall perception that they have. Good? So all of those 4 things, 3 are happening every week. The surveys, because we all hate surveys, we only send once a month, right? But they know, they agree. So that's what we use to track. When we capture what they think through these channels, through the 4 tactics that I told you that we're using to gather feedback, we focus on 3 areas. Is this relevant? Is this responsive? Is this convenient? So here's in where we want to get what they think, right? So the definition of convenience, was it easy? And don't think like only like, oh, was it easy to navigate the platform? No, tell me the context in where you were using it. Imagine a sales rep trying to get information of an AI agent that is in a pre-call, before a call, 2 hours before the call, versus in a congress. The same purpose, completely different situation. In a congress, maybe they are just seeing a doctor that they haven't had the chance to engage with, and they want to get some insights. That's fast, that's quick. Versus planning a call on oncology in where they don't have the chance to connect with physicians very often, and they have some time to plan that meeting that they will have for 5 minutes. Same type of insight, completely different context. So that's what we want to understand from those type of contexts, what's the definition of easiness, if it's convenient. Then when we talk about accuracy, and this is one that I love about AI, because I know that everybody will say that AI sometimes lie. But that is true, that is true. There are ways to minimize that, and what we have seen is dramatically, it's really very close to 100% of accuracy. There's a way to make AI to really don't jump into that hallucination issues that they have. That is not the problem. But there's a perception also of accuracy, and that's very interesting to understand. So here we don't only check all the data, is the AI serving the data that we have in our systems? Yes, no, that could tell us accuracy from a technical point of view. We also ask about the perception of accuracy. And here we see a gap, right? Sometimes where users are getting an answer that they think that is not the right one, for multiple reasons, right? But that's also why we want to understand if they feel that this is really accurate or not. And finally, the relevancy of how useful is this, right? Is really helping you to achieve your goal faster, better, whatever, right? So here's in where I was telling you the example of perception of efficiency. This is in where here, like, okay, is this helping you to make things faster? So that's what we, as I was telling you before in the methodology, we track with a lot of data, but then we compensate understanding what they think. And then what we activate is 2 different actions. We either go with ongoing systematic issues to weekly meetings to put these into the backlog, to discuss with the development team, to discuss with the legal team, to discuss with everybody who has to manage the development process. But also we highlight critical issues that might not wait for our cycles, right? So that's why we have 2 paths, and we call the outer loop and the inner loop. So basically this is just ensuring us that we have a clear path for whatever we prioritize. If I didn't put it there, I just would, yeah, prioritize is key, right? Because again, the volume of insights that we can capture is huge, but our ability to react on them or our capacity to act on them is limited. So that's why even though we work with all of this collection of information, we go through a very strict process of prioritization. So then whatever is going to the fixes is really something that will move the needle. And then we redo the cycle week after week after week. To be honest, if you asked me 2 years ago, Jorge, do you think that you would be able to work this way? I would laugh. I already told you I've been in Pfizer for 20 years, which is, thank you. Now I know that that's not a very creative thing for me to do. But we are doing it, and it's exhausting. And many times we want to just stop doing this because it's painful. But as soon as you are gaining maturity, it's becoming easier. And what always happens is that the output is there. The improvement is there. you start seeing it. It's not anymore reporting on a satisfaction score. Now we are reporting on a business impact number, or a number that impacts the business. That's really amazing. And that's as I was telling you, forget about AI. Campaigns, processes, strategies. This methodology applies for everything, and that's why we are working across a large group of functions in the company, and with basically all therapeutic areas for marketing, sales, and access processes. So anyway, let me stop by saying, because this took me a lot of time, just what you know. To humanize technology, listen to users is not enough anymore. It's prioritization and taking action, what they will really appreciate. Thank you so much for your time. I don't know if there's any question.
All right, thank you, Jorge. What questions do we have? All right, while you're thinking, I have a question for you. So the feedback slide, I've lived and breathed those iterative processes that feed into a backlog. There is always a sticking point somewhere in that loop. Where did you find that process most commonly was at risk of breaking down?
So I wouldn't say breaking down, but in where we have to invest always more time investigating or clarifying, you can imagine, medical, legal, and regulatory, legal, regulatory, and compliance. It's something that is part of the feedback loop. Every week we have a session with them, and many times those sessions are planned to be 1 hour and ended up being that week 5 or 6 hours, and because we are asking us to bring more data. That's one. And the other one with the development process. At the end of the day, yes, we can push a lot with insights on our point of view of impact, but they are the ones who feel the pain of, hey, if you don't make these 20 changes next week, everything is gonna go down south. So of course, they try to balance that, and they are the ones who push push the most into that prioritization process to say, okay, how accurate is that risk, or how accurate is that opportunity? That only helps us to dig in more into the insights and to validate, right, if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. But those are, I wouldn't say that in where we breaks, but the ones that constantly are requiring more time.
Yeah, makes
Thank
sense.
you. Alex.
That was really good. Thank you for that. I took pictures. I was sort of thinking, obviously AI is a hot button for compliance for all of the clients in the room, and everyone really. What are you doing as a CX lead at Pfizer to not only prepare for what's now, but prepare for the future? And I know our industry takes a while. I remember social took forever in our industry. So what are you kind of doing to kind of prepare for potential regulation as you're building this way of augmenting what we do with AI?
So I'm gonna give you a very boring answer, and thank you so much for the question. Everything is too new. So the only thing that we are able to do is to have the commitment from privacy, legal, and compliance to sit with us, to put really a lot of time with us every week. And we have seen this in other projects before, but it was a random project. And now, them having dedicated teams that are trying to craft this next to us and solve issue by issue. When we start talking about the future, they bring us back and they said, let's talk about the problem for today, and that will have implications tomorrow. In the beginning, I didn't get it, and I was saying that, but we are just fixing today, and maybe by fixing today, we're creating a bigger problem for tomorrow. But then regulation is not stable outside of our companies, and the AI companies providing services are also changing their terms constantly. So assuming that the present will be exactly in the future, very similar than in the future, I think that they have a point, and they agree. But bottom line, really trying to tackle this week after week, and they having time to go deeper, and instead of just saying no or just saying yes, it's the way we're trying to solve it.
Okay, one more right here in the.
Hey, Jorge. So curious.
Remind us who you are.
Oh, sorry. Jason from LiveRamp.
We ate yesterday together.
First of all, love what you were saying about, like, we're not shooting for a baseline, like, we're shooting for a North Star. I think that's excellent for all of us to be thinking about. So I'm curious, in terms of the deployment of some of these new technologies to change customer experiences, how has that changed Pfizer's North Star? And can you give like a concrete example of how, like, maybe how you're delivering care, how you're designing apps for patients? What's changed and what's the new North Star as a result of this technology?
So we're very lucky that our CEO is the one who believes very strong on customer experience. And I cannot give you too many details, but something that I can share is that a couple of years ago, when we started to go with the first direct-to-consumer, direct-to-patient channel, he was the one who was asking for a specific score of satisfaction. At that time, we were not very into the customer performance indicators. We were tracking satisfaction, but he informed himself very well, and he was not telling us, I don't want to know if we have majority of people satisfied or not. He gave us the target. He informed himself. He had a group of advisors who told them what was the North Star that technology companies had in terms of satisfaction, and he was the one telling us, we're not launching until we reach this number. Even if I like what I'm seeing, we are not going to be out until I see that number. So what impact this has? You can just go out and see some of the platforms that Pfizer has put together for patients recently in the past 2 years. Answers by Pfizer, Health Answers by Pfizer, or Pfizer for All, and look those products versus the type of products that we were delivering before. And you will see that there's a difference between night and day. So at the end of the day, that's better for patients. They have better services from us, better communications from us, and of course, a better journey. So bottom line, I think that driving a better experience is just helping us to achieve these goals that we had of great services, but a larger scale, or that convert better to whatever behavior we're looking for. Of course, we haven't done it across the whole company, but in the top priorities, you have seen it. Thank you so much.
All right,
I know that I
thank you.
took more than I needed.